Shoe Dog. This is a business memoir written by Phil Knight, the founder of Nike. The background of this biography can be summarized in 3 key points. First, about Phil Knight. Born in 1938 in Oregon, USA, Phil Knight is now 79 years old. Throughout his nearly 8-decade life, he focused on one singular mission: building Nike from nothing. His entrepreneurial spirit never wavered. Beyond his business success, Knight possesses remarkable personal charisma. Always sporting black sunglasses and dressed in casual blazers with jeans, he exudes natural coolness in everything he does. He doesn't fit the typical corporate executive mold, resembling more of a Hollywood star, which earned him the reputation as the most unusual Fortune 500 leader. Second, about the memoir. This marks Phil Knight's first official sharing of his entrepreneurial journey, written personally at age 79. Unlike conventional business memoirs, it's neither a traditional autobiography nor a promotional piece about Nike's greatness. Instead, it's crafted like a novel. Third, about the timeline. The book covers the 18-year period from 1962, when he decided to start his business, to 1980, when Nike successfully went public. In 1962, Knight was a 24-year-old college graduate with no money to his name. By 1980, at age 42, he led the company to annual revenues exceeding $140 million, surpassing Adidas in the U.S. market to become the industry leader. Throughout the book, 2 main narratives emerge. The first centers on shoe dogs, defining what they are and how they live. A shoe dog isn't an actual animal, but refers to someone who's completely devoted to making, selling, buying, or designing shoes. In simple terms, they're hardcore sneaker enthusiasts who live and breathe footwear, treating shoes as their ultimate passion. The book highlights 3 quintessential shoe dogs: Phil Knight himself, Bill Bowerman, and Jeff Johnson. Bill Bowerman, Knight's fellow Oregonian and his track coach at the University of Oregon, was known for his strict demeanor and quiet nature. This coach was quite peculiar. He was obsessed with athletes' feet. Why? He spent all day thinking about how to improve their shoes, collecting all sorts of bizarre materials to make running shoes, like fish skin, mouse skin, and whatnot. The stranger the material, the more interested he became, using his team members as test subjects. The author frequently served as his guinea pig during school, enduring countless experiments. When the author decided to start a business, he immediately thought of this eccentric teacher and invited him to become a partner. After pooling their resources at a restaurant, they each could only come up with $500, totaling $1,000. This $1,000 marked the legendary beginning of Nike, with the coach becoming the sole partner with 50% ownership. Many might assume he became wealthy, given Nike's current value. Surprisingly, he showed no interest in money. After the company's establishment, he completely ignored its operations, remaining fixated on shoe development. By 1971, when the company reached $1.3 million in sales, Bowerman was already wealthy. But what was he doing? One day, during breakfast with his wife, he became transfixed by a waffle, staring at it for several minutes before suddenly jumping up and grabbing the waffle iron from the kitchen. He had noticed the unique pattern on the waffle surface and was inspired to use it for shoe soles. To replicate the exact pattern, he poured melted rubber into the waffle iron, creating a mess and even suffering from toxic fume inhalation. His wife looked at him as if he were an alien, finding his behavior completely irrational. This co-founder, owning half of Nike, was quite different from what one might expect in a business partner. Eventually, his persistence paid off, and the waffle pattern sole became a reality. This became the famous Waffle Trainer, one of Nike's signature products. The shoes were so comfortable and attractive that people wore them not just for running but for work, school, and casual outings, making athletic shoes a fashion statement for the first time. The second shoe dog was Jeff Johnson, whom the author met while pursuing his master's at Stanford University. Johnson was also a long-distance runner on the track team. Another devoted shoe enthusiast, after graduation, he couldn't let go of his shoe obsession and sold Adidas shoes part-time. Upon learning this, the author invited him to work full-time in market development. Thus, Jeff Johnson became the company's third pioneer, heading sales and marketing. Though officially in sales, his true passion lay in the shoes themselves. Unlike typical salespeople who focused on transactions, he constantly invited people to try shoes for free. He would engage in lengthy discussions about the shoes, regardless of whether a sale was made. The author eventually realized that Johnson was more interested in discussing shoes than making sales. Surprisingly, this unconventional approach, spreading by word of mouth, attracted even more sneakerheads to the store, and sales actually soared. Moreover, this person had a peculiar habit. He wrote letters to his boss every single day. What did he write about? He documented his daily conversations with customers. As a salesperson who traveled frequently, he chose to share his experiences through handwritten letters, detailing his interactions with customers from all across the country. The author described him as a letter-writing fanatic. His letters covered everything imaginable, from which shoes were selling well to trivial incidents like a child who twisted their ankle while trying on their shoes. He sent every little detail to his boss. As shoe sales increased, so did the volume of his letters. Sometimes he'd send several letters in a single day, literally overwhelming the boss's mailbox. The author was exasperated, thinking, is this person just seeking attention? He decided to ignore the letters completely, never responding to a single one. But regardless of the lack of response, the salesman continued his solitary practice of documenting his observations and experiences. This unusual habit continued for many years until the author finally understood. This wasn't about seeking attention. It was about genuine passion and love for shoes. The author summarizes his 18 years of entrepreneurial insights into 4 key words: love, persistence, passion, and innovation. Let's start with the first keyword, love. The author believes that his ability to pursue entrepreneurship and establish Nike as a great company stemmed from following his heart's true passion. As mentioned earlier, in 1962, he was just 24 years old. In his own words, he was shy, pale, skinny as a pole, hadn't experienced much in life, and hadn't even dated. Though technically an adult, he still felt like a child. Phil Knight was just an ordinary young man at the time, feeling lost and struggling. After completing his MBA and returning home, he had no idea what kind of job to pursue. To ease his anxiety and confusion, he would often sneak out to the mountains behind his house before dawn, running through the woods while talking to himself to release his frustrations. Nike was the one that finally put an end to all the self-criticism and complaints. A crazy idea rescued Phil Knight from mediocrity. During his college years, he had a discussion class that required writing a paper. Phil wrote about his greatest passion, athletic shoes. He observed that Japanese products were already dominating certain markets, like how their cameras had overtaken German ones. He believed that in the athletic shoe industry, Japanese shoes would similarly surpass German Adidas. Therefore, he thought it was crucial to introduce Japanese shoes to Americans, allowing them to experience better, more comfortable athletic footwear. While this was just a homework assignment, Phil Knight, contemplating in the woods, decided to follow his heart and use this insight as his breakthrough, mustering the courage to start his entrepreneurial journey. He then took 3 bold steps. First, he sold his car and combined it with all his summer job savings to fund a trip to Japan in 1962. Second, he ventured alone to Kobe, Japan, and walked straight into the Onitsuka Tiger Shoe Company, which later became ASICS, to propose selling their shoes in America. Third, after negotiations, he spent $50 to wholesale 12 pairs of shoes. These 12 pairs became the foundation of his business. All 3 actions were considered extremely radical at the time. In 1962, just 17 years after World War II, many Americans still harbored deep resentment and prejudice against Japan. His family strongly opposed his trip. Moreover, as a fresh graduate with no business experience, there was no guarantee that the company would agree to work with him or that Americans would buy the shoes. Even he didn't expect to make much money from these shoes. How can we explain such a risky venture with seemingly little profit potential? There's only one explanation: passion. Knight believes it was this pure inner passion that enabled him to take this crucial life step. Otherwise, he might still be complaining in the woods today. After passion comes persistence. Remember those 12 pairs of shoes Phil bought for $50? Did everything unfold like a fairy tale with a happily ever after? While dreams are beautiful, reality is harsh. The truth was quite the opposite. Knight reveals that his business struggled tremendously after launch. Actually, struggled is an understatement. It was painful and tortuous. This extremely difficult period lasted for 13 years, from his start in 1962 until Nike's debt crisis in 1975. Every day was filled with frustration, helplessness, anxiety, and chaos. Often, just when Phil thought he was having a decent day, he'd be hit with a barrage of bad news. He faced betrayal from business partners, banks pulling support, and lack of understanding from family members. The hardships were truly endless. Let me tell you about the story of those 12 pairs of shoes. He eagerly paid the money and happily returned home, ready to start his business venture. However, these 12 pairs of shoes, traveling from Japan to America, took over a year to arrive. During this time, he sent several telegrams urging the supplier, but there was no progress. Whether it was a shipping issue or slow logistics, those darn 12 pairs of shoes just wouldn't arrive while time kept slipping away. During this period, with no other options, he had to take a job at an accounting firm to make ends meet. He sat in the office day after day, time dragging by, constantly thinking about his business dream. Despite his frustration, he never gave up on his initial decision. When the shoes finally arrived a year later, he immediately began marketing and sales, deciding to partner with his former teacher, Bill Bowerman, to start a company. The second story takes place in the following years, when the Japanese Onitsuka company consistently deceived Phil Knight. While promising him exclusive distribution rights in America on the surface, they were secretly contacting other American companies behind his back and deliberately creating supply difficulties and delays. By the 6th year of his venture, Phil Knight was barely making any money and nearly had to shut down. Desperate, he took a teaching assistant position at a university, using his teaching salary to pay his employees. Facing this situation, he knew something was wrong but couldn't obtain concrete evidence. For years, he could only watch helplessly as the Japanese company manipulated him. Finally, in his 9th year of business, 1971, he accidentally glimpsed the Japanese sales manager's folder, finally obtaining evidence for his counterattack. When everything came to light, he discovered the situation was even worse than imagined. The Japanese company had secretly contacted 18 companies across America, planning to cut him out and use this as leverage against him. The author felt devastated and hurt. But what could he do? Phil Knight didn't give up. Instead, he decided to make a clean break, leave the Japanese company behind, and start his own venture with his team, founding Nike. That same year, 1971, the famous Nike logo, the Swoosh, was born. The name Nike comes from the Greek goddess of victory. Visitors to Athens might know that beside the famous Parthenon on the Acropolis stands the temple of Athena Nike. This is where the company's name originates, as Nike means victory. The author said, "I wasn't after success or wealth. Ultimately, I wanted to be like a long-distance runner, using my perseverance to achieve victory at the finish line." Here's the section about passion. Nike incorporated passion as a core element of its corporate culture from its inception. This culture actually originated from athletes on the sports field. The founder believed that every athlete must have abundant passion to maintain their vitality. Once passion disappears, even the most excellent athletes cannot achieve success. There are two iconic symbols that represent this passion. The first is the Nike logo, the flying swoosh. In 1971, when Phil Knight decided to break away from the Japanese company, his team gathered to design a logo that would perfectly interpret an athlete's passion. After much deliberation, the swoosh was born. In the founder's words, it represents the shadow left by a track athlete swiftly running past you, inspiring passion and momentum. Besides the swoosh, there's Nike's famous slogan, "Just do it." This stirring tagline became a household phrase, deeply resonating with people, and even became a motto for many young Americans. Like the famous swoosh, it transcended advertising to become a cultural phenomenon in America. In internal management, Phil Knight thoroughly implemented this passion-driven culture. A prime example was the butt-face meetings. These were work gatherings invented by Knight to promote communication among business partners. Periodically, he would gather his team from across America at a resort hotel room. There, they could freely express themselves, joke, argue, and criticize anyone. Knight even encouraged them to voice all complaints directly to him. These meetings had no hierarchy or age distinctions. Everyone was equal and free to speak their minds. Sometimes, discussions would become heated, with faces turning red and papers flying everywhere. Other times, the room would erupt in laughter. After daytime meetings, they would continue discussions in bars at night, drinking and banging tables. These meetings often lasted 2 to 3 days. Knight believed these seemingly ridiculous gatherings maintained passion and vitality between him and his partners, the most precious assets of a startup company. He clearly understood that as the company grew, if everyone became too conventional and silent, the startup would be doomed. After discussing passion, the final element is innovation. As mentioned earlier, during his 18 years of entrepreneurship, the author faced various challenges from Japanese companies, business partners, and banks, but these were just a portion of his entrepreneurial challenges. The biggest challenges actually came from the suppression by other brands. In 1971, when the founder started Nike, the American athletic shoe market was already extremely saturated, making it incredibly difficult to do business. The market was flooded with countless athletic shoe brands like Adidas, New Balance, Converse, Puma, Spalding, Diadora, and many others. Any one of these brands was far more established than Nike, and they had already divided up the market among themselves. So how did the then unknown Nike carve out its path through such fierce competition and maintain its position until today? The answer lies in innovation. The most iconic example, which brought Nike instant fame, was their air cushioning technology. In 1977, 5 years after Nike's founding, Phil Knight met a rather eccentric character named Frank Rudy. How eccentric was he? He was an aerospace engineer who was always disheveled, had crooked teeth, wore glasses as thick as beer bottle bottoms, and carried a small notebook where he recorded everything. This man even meticulously documented his intimate life and bathroom habits. This peculiar fellow had his mind completely occupied with shoe designs and was, surprisingly, a dedicated shoe dog himself. He had a crazy idea to inject air into athletic shoes. He believed this would provide better cushioning and shock absorption, and even imagined that stepping on these air cushions could make people feel like they were flying. He drew numerous sketches and created a large air cushion prototype, taking these materials first to Adidas. Unsurprisingly, Adidas dismissed him as a lunatic, so he approached Phil Knight instead. Upon meeting this shoe dog, Knight immediately stuffed the air cushion into his own shoes, ran out of the office, and completed a 6-mile run. Upon returning, he simply said, "This is good. I want it." The man was overwhelmed by this response, almost embarrassed. He replied, "Actually, the air cushion still has many issues and might need a regulator to function properly." Knight immediately responded, "I don't care. Let's start working on it now." Thus, after 9 months of continuous refinement and development by a group of shoe dogs, this milestone product in Nike's history finally hit the market. Nike's air cushioning technology brought the company enormous profits and prestige. By 1979, just 2 years after meeting the eccentric aerospace engineer, Nike had become unstoppable in the American market, successfully surpassing Adidas and creating a business miracle. Nike continues to evolve and innovate. Thanks to the dedication of the shoe dogs, from the first-generation product, they developed various innovative technologies including high-pressure air cushions, full-length air units, and impact cushioning systems. To this day, air technology remains Nike's largest technical branch in their footwear family. The author believes this miraculous success was no coincidence. As he puts it, those who break conventions are often misunderstood. In today's terms, it confirms the saying, "The market never lacks opportunities, it only lacks great products." This book is an autobiography by Phil Knight, Nike's founder, chronicling his entrepreneurial journey from 1962 when he decided to start his business until Nike's successful IPO in 1980, an 18-year journey. The author weaves 2 main narratives throughout the book. The first follows the shoe dogs, people obsessed with athletic footwear, and their lives and stories. 3 key shoe dogs stand out: the author himself, his college coach and business partner Bill Bowerman, and Jeff Johnson, who headed sales. The second narrative presents the author's reflections on his 18-year entrepreneurial journey, distilled into 4 key elements: love, perseverance, passion, and innovation. The author credits these 4 principles for helping him transform from a penniless young man into a successful entrepreneur. When he first started selling shoes from his hometown, people looked down on him. Even after establishing Nike, many still viewed them as just a bunch of outsiders and misfits from Oregon. Not only did they face skepticism, but many of his peers were also selling shoes at the time. Phil Knight wasn't the only entrepreneur in the athletic footwear business during that period. So why was he someone people saw as just a champagne connoisseur and underdog, the one who made it to the end? There's really no secret to it. I believe it was these precious qualities that carried him through. Let's conclude with Mr. Phil Knight's favorite motto. The coward never starts. The weak die along the way. Only we march forward, never ceasing, day by day.